Look at this map. 4 objectives, 4 X's. Destroy Iran's missile arsenal. Secure the Strait of Hormuz. Prevent nuclear breakout. Dismantle the proxy networks. 0 for 4. This is what defeat looks like when a superpower will not call it defeat. 850 Tomahawks, $3 billion, and every single objective did not just fail, it reversed. Iran came out harder to hit, harder to isolate, and 72 days from a bomb. Pentagon planners arrived at their first ledger entry with a number: 850 Tomahawk cruise missiles, fired in less than 4 weeks. The sticker price, $3.06 billion, covered just the missiles, not the ships, the bombers, or the overtime for analysts counting craters. At first glance, the math looked simple: overwhelm Iran's launch sites, erase the threat, and move on. Boy, that worked out. Within days, the burn rate outpaced the entire annual production line. Raytheon's Tucson plant, built for 90 Tomahawks a year, watched 70% of the pre-war stockpile vanish by March. The resupply memo, stamped urgent, called for 200 more missiles, delivery sometime after the next presidential election. Meanwhile, the supposed targets kept firing back. On March 1st, a Qiyam-2 missile hit Eilat, Israel. 4 days later, a tanker burned near the Strait of Hormuz. Shipping logs recorded the incident, and the Pentagon logged another deficit. For every $1 billion spent, Iranian launch signatures stayed stubbornly on the map. The cost curve bent upward, but the enemy's fires never went out. If this was victory by attrition, the attrition ledger ran only one way. Iranian engineers watched the early missile strikes, took notes, and got to work. What the Pentagon called damage became in Tehran a set of engineering requirements. Satellite passes from Maxar, dated March and April, caught the telltale signs: new excavation scars beside old craters, concrete mixers rolling in at dawn, and the arrival of Chinese-made tunnel-boring machines, 1,200 millimeters in diameter, with armor-clad heads, shipped in 3 pieces and reassembled under tarps. Procurement records later leaked listed at least 3 of these tunnel-boring machines delivered between 2021 and 2024, each rated for over 2 megapascals of overburden, enough to push shafts down to 120 meters, well below the reach of most American bunker busters. The craters left by Tomahawks became blueprints for deeper tunnels and thicker caps. By mid-2025, fresh shafts appeared on satellite images, often right next to the old ones. Engineers installed new seismic isolation joints and blast mitigation doors, some fabricated locally, others imported from Chinese steel suppliers. Every failed strike became a lesson in how to build better. The result is a network of missile cities that, instead of shrinking, grew deeper, harder, and more expensive to neutralize. In the American ledger, each billion spent bought a few hours of silence. In the Iranian ledger, it bought a design upgrade. Iranian planners did not waste time with symmetry. Instead of matching the Pentagon's billion-dollar missiles, they sent out Shahed 136 drones in dense, overlapping waves. The drones themselves cost less than a decent pickup truck, but each forced a $3 million Patriot PAC-3 interceptor into the sky. On April 12th alone, open source counts put 40 interceptors in the air over the UAE, roughly $120 million gone in a single afternoon, all to swat down flying lawnmowers. The arithmetic was both simple and merciless. For every cheap drone, a high-end shield was drained. Once the interceptors ran low, the next act began. On April 14th, a Fateh 313 ballistic missile struck Al Dhafra Air Base, slipping past the exhausted defenses. The sequence was deliberate. Drones emptied the magazines, and missiles finished the job. One Iranian engineer, quoted in a leaked Telegram chat, called it the economics of patience. The Pentagon called for more interceptors. Raytheon called for more overtime. Iran called for another swarm. Boy, that worked out. On April 12th, Iran posted a notice that would have made even the most hardened shipbroker choke on his espresso. A $2 million fee per supertanker, payable in advance, for passage through the Strait of Hormuz. The world's busiest oil corridor overnight became a toll booth operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The paperwork was not subtle. Official letterhead, stamped signatures, and a line for wire transfer instructions. By the end of that week, marine traffic replay logs showed a traffic jam that would make Los Angeles blush. Over 2,000 vessels queued or idling in the Gulf, waiting for clearance or a miracle. Charter rates spiked, insurance underwriters stopped answering the phone, and market analysts tried to calculate the cost of a day's delay when the answer was simply more than you can afford. The backlog was not just oil tankers, container ships, LNG carriers, even bulk grain vessels, all stuck, all burning money every hour they sat still. Satellite snapshots captured the gridlock, a snarl of hulls stretching from Bandar Abbas to the mouth of the strait. The official U.S. line insisted freedom of navigation was non-negotiable. The market begged to differ. Spot prices for crude surged as buyers scrambled for alternatives, and shipping giants quietly rerouted around Africa, adding 2 weeks and a small fortune to every voyage. Iran, for the first time in living memory, had turned Hormuz into a cash register. The world paid at the window or sat in line. On May 22nd, the container ship MSC Georgia took a direct hit from a Houthi-launched anti-ship missile near Bab el-Mandeb. The strike did not just torch a few containers, it torched the actuarial tables at Lloyd's of London. Within 24 hours, marine insurance premiums for Gulf to Europe routes spiked by 400%. Not a typo. 4 times higher overnight. Ship owners scrambled to recalculate. What is the price of a Red Sea crossing when a single missile can bankrupt your voyage? The UN panel of experts on Yemen issued a terse update. Houthi commanders, cut loose from Iranian state logistics, had gone fully autonomous. They were not waiting for orders from Tehran. They were improvising, targeting flagged vessels at will. Each successful strike fed back into the premium spiral. By June, the cost of insuring a bulk carrier through Bab el-Mandeb rivaled the charter rate itself. Some ship owners simply stopped quoting. Others rerouted around Africa, adding weeks and millions to delivery times. The Pentagon's fourth objective had been to sever Iran's proxy network. Instead, the proxies became more dangerous, more independent, and at least for the shipping industry, more expensive than ever. Boy, that worked out. The International Atomic Energy Agency's quarterly report, dated June 2025, landed with a number that no one in Washington wanted to see. Iran's estimated breakout time for a nuclear weapon had dropped to 72 days. Before the bombing campaign, that figure hovered near a year. The official explanation from Tehran was blunt. Missile strikes on civilian infrastructure had erased any remaining debate. In a televised address, the Supreme National Defense Council declared that nuclear capability is now the only credible deterrent. Inside Iran, the regime's machinery did not buckle. It consolidated. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, 125,000 strong, activated its wartime economic playbook. Construction contracts, oil shipments, and telecom networks were all routed through the Guard's portfolio. The Basij, a volunteer force of 700,000, expanded its reach with food aid and housing grants, binding millions to the system. For every missile crater, a new round of mobilization. For every blackout, a surge in regime loyalty. The paradox was not lost on nuclear planners. What was meant to be a decapitation strike became a sprint. Centrifuge cascades multiplied in Natanz and Fordow. IAEA inspectors, once routine visitors, now found their access limited as new roof covers went up overnight. Trump's internal monologue might have asked, "What's the price of pressure if the only answer is speed?" Boy, that worked out. Russian oil tankers began arriving at European ports just as the last Tomahawk silo ran dry. The International Energy Agency tracked 600,000 barrels per day, rerouted from sanctioned routes, filling the vacuum left by Hormuz gridlock. German, Korean, and Indian refiners signed new contracts with Moscow, quietly erasing 3 years of sanctions policy in a single quarter. For the Kremlin, the war in Iran was a windfall. No tanks rolled, but the ruble grew fat on redirected crude. China, meanwhile, played a longer game. U.S. strikes on Iranian smelters wiped out 1/12 of global primary aluminum supply overnight. Chinese producers, already holding 60% of the market, picked up the slack and then some. Gallium, a metal essential for semiconductors and missile radars, remained a near monopoly, with China supplying 90% of global demand. Western buyers, squeezed between missing Iranian shipments and Beijing's export quotas, found the definition of leverage rewritten in yuan. NATO's unity, once a given, fractured at the first sign of risk. Only 6 out of 32 members publicly endorsed the campaign. Spain withheld overflight rights, Italy closed its ports, and Gulf partners began shopping for alternate security guarantees. In the ledger of winners and losers, the U.S. coalition found itself outmaneuvered not by Tehran, but by the opportunists waiting just beyond the blast radius. The question left hanging: when the dust settles, who is left to count on? Today, Iran's proxies adapt, the strait remains volatile, and nuclear risks escalate, despite $3 billion, 800 missiles, and 4 clear objectives. Boy, that worked out. In this new landscape, American power looks less like deterrence and more like wishful accounting. The audit is not over. Join the discussion below.